Welcome, everybody, to our Tuesday talk today. I'm so glad to see all of you. I'm pleased to present our speaker today, who is Dr. Tal Sadeh. His PhD is in international relations, and he has an MA in economics. He's a senior lecturer at the Department of Political Science at Tel Aviv University. His degrees both come from Hebrew University of Jerusalem. His research and teaching interests include international political economy and the political economy of the EU. In particular, the single currency and EU-Israeli relations. He is the author of the book Sustaining European Monetary Union, and he's published articles and edited special issues in leading academic journals. His title of his talk today is up, as you can see, in the Vanguard of Globalization, the OECD, and International Capital Liberalization. Please join me in welcoming him today as our speaker.
Okay, you guys loud enough? It's good? I'm happy to be here. This is a project that I'm doing together with David Howarth from University of Edinburgh. The motivation for this project is the upcoming 50th anniversary of the OECD, established in 1960. I just hope you know what the OECD is, because we don't have time into establishing this. This is, I should also say, a rudimentary stage of our work. We only got to seriously working on this about a month ago. And so you are at the disadvantage of seeing something raw, but I am at the advantage of gaining the most. When people present mostly polished job works that they're doing, then there's not much that can be added or corrected at that late stage. So I apologize if some of you find it too rudimentary. So motivation is A, the anniversary, and B, the financial crisis, which is a good time to reflect on how we got to where we did, starting from the Bretton Woods system, a world of limited capital flows and limited financial liberalization. We surveyed the literature, and we find that the OECD barely gets mentioned in political economy studies. It's a forgotten child of global institutions. We have a lot of literature on the IMF, we have a lot of literature on the EU, of course, non-financial institutions, WTO, etc. The OECD, you would think, from reading political science and political economy literature, that it doesn't matter. So we think it's time to switch the limelight on and give the OECD its due place, not just in terms of respect, but in terms of stressing the role it played in financial globalization. So the argument is that it did play an important role. The role that the OECD mostly plays is what Woodward calls the palliative effect, which means the OECD is a facilitator, where negotiations over legally binding agreements fail. When more research is needed, the OECD is often a place to do this. Of course, the IMF has a research department, and actually a bigger and more professional than any of the research bodies of the OECD. But its studies are a bit academic, whereas the OECD brings together policymakers who can sort out practical issues that arise when you manage a policy. In this sense, it has been very important in resolving many of the issues confronting policymakers in the process of financial globalization. Specifically, the Committee on Capital Movements and Invisible Transactions had three important tasks. We used principal agent analysis, the principals being the member states of the OECD, the agent is this committee. The committee is subject to the Council of the OECD. The Council is an intergovernmental body. And it has established a few committees to guard the codes that set the regime for capital liberalization. Pooled expertise is the first delegated task. The people who sat on this CMIT were experts in financial liberalization from ministries of finance of member states. They were all experts on the matter, but when you bring them together, you generate more than the sum of the parts. Second task, a coordination. This policy issue, this issue area, is characterized by policy externalities with what we call a coordination problem. In externalities, in policy externalities, we distinguish between coordination problems and collaboration problems. In collaboration problems, there is disagreement and mutual suspicion about the preferred result. Or in more simple, crude terms, the top priority of each player is to cheat on the other. Whereas in coordination problems, there is an agreement about what needs to be done, but there are a few ways to do this. And either there is disagreement about the way to do it, or there's just an inability to decide on one particular solution. So that's a coordination problem. The third task is credibility. Another feature of this policy area of capital liberalization is that even if you accept, and that, by the way, is by no means a given, but even if you accept that in the long run, liberalized capital flows are a good thing, something you want to achieve, you may find on the way that you are tempted. This is a time inconsistency issue. You may be tempted to go back on your liberalization for various real-world issues that occur, crisis, or even less dramatic issues. So you need credibility to pursue this policy. So all this gave the CMIT an entrepreneurial role. But our argument goes beyond this. Not only did it have a role on account of these delegated tasks, which were written. I mean, nobody said time inconsistency in writing in any of these codes or coordination problem, but this is our interpretation using the principal agent framework analysis of the codes. But there was also an entrepreneurial role that it played within what we call agency slack, which means it had a certain range of autonomy after the member states had constrained it with the codes and what to do or not to do. And I should say, in every agency, there is some autonomy. There is no way to eliminate autonomy altogether. The only question is, how large autonomy? And we should also be clear that autonomy and discretion are not the same thing. Discretion is, as I will soon elaborate on, is a feature of the control measures that the principals apply to the agent. They could give it formal discretion or not. And more discretion could mean more autonomy, but not necessarily. This is not a one-on-one thing. Okay? So the agency, the CMIT, had autonomy, and it used it to do something that the member states didn't mean it to do. That's where slack comes in, when the agent does something not intended by the principals. There are two forms of slack. One is shirking. Shirking means that you're cheating on your principles, or that you are being lazy in doing what you're supposed to do, like your broker, right? What do they do with your stocks? That's shirking. Then there is slippage. Slippage is when you're following as an agent